We have learned from John A. Powell that belonging is both subjective and objective. To us, this means that in order to advance belonging, we must engage in actions that help more people to more regularly access this feeling of belonging through transforming the structures we work within and are connected to. We acknowledge that the conditions for individual belonging may vary from person to person, requiring us to listen to others, to incorporate their ideas, and to ultimately develop strategies that meet the needs for a wide range of people. While the experience of belonging is subjective, there are objective conditions, processes, policies, and structures that can be changed to increase access to belonging. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of When We Belong. We are here once again to give a more personal perspective of what it means to bring in belonging in a real authentic way, and also make sure that the folks that we are serving, all of you amazing Washingtonians, feel as though you belong when it comes to the work of state government. So I am TraeAnna Holiday, the communications director for Washington State's Office of Equity. And I will allow all of my amazing folks here to make sure that they introduce themselves, because maybe you didn't see the first episode. We want to make sure you know who you're talking to. I'll hand it right on over here to Marissa.
Thanks, Trey. My name's Marissa Joy VanHoozer, and I do use she, her pronouns, and I've got the privilege of working at the Department of Commerce as the Chief Equity and Operations Officer, and love being able to be part of this group of women of color leaders hosting this conversation on behalf of so many Washington State employees. Thank you.
Let's pass it on over to Michaela. Go ahead.
Thanks, Trey. So hi, everyone. Michaela Doleman. I use she, her, and they, them pronouns, and I lead the state HR office, which is kind of housed within the Office of Financial Management, but provides HR services and policy work to all of state government. And just really honored and excited to be here to kind of explore and figure out like what we don't know and kind of co-build with everyone listening today too, because as we're here talking, but we know we don't have all the answers, and we want to build this with you, knowing that it takes everyone in state government to be able to build our culture. Megan, I can turn it over to you.
Thanks so much, Michaela.
You have to do my introduction first next time because I can't follow these two. You set me up for failure already. My name is Megan Matthews. Good afternoon, good morning, whatever time you're watching this. My pronouns are she and her, and I am the director for the Washington State Office of Equity. I am excited to be here with these amazing colleagues and friends across the state enterprise. We are excited to begin this dialogue in an intentional way to think about how do we operationalize, how do we make it real, these concepts, the concept of belonging. It's such a big and vast thing, and really trying to dissect what that means for the system and for the individual. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, everyone, for being here.
Absolutely. Well, we've been talking about a lot of different things, and when it comes to belonging, and really, we want to be able to bring the audience into some of these concepts and ideas. Megan, I want you to kind of start and lead us off and get us on the right foot here for this episode, so we can really start to anchor ourselves in this discussion of belonging and how we're experiencing it from the multitude of layers that I think we are all in state government kind of experiencing, even for me when I'm new. Go ahead, Megan.
And thank you, Trey, Megan Matthews. That's really a good point, because belonging means so many, as you all kind of heard in our intro. Belonging is subjective and objective, and it has so many different meanings. And that's why it's hard to put into practice, because it's not one thing. And I think that's really hard for human beings, because we like to know what to do. And there is no one thing to do, because I think it's going to require something that is comprehensive, something that's complicated, something that has multifaceted or has a lot of different parts and pieces to it. It's kind of like a recipe when you're making something. I think there's going to be a lot of ingredients to get to belonging, and that those ingredients may change from community to community and from individual within community to another individual within the same community, because we're not all the same, right? We have different experiences, even though for us, we like to lump all people in one of the same categories. So I want to pass it to Marissa to kind of dig more into and bring some more complexity to this discussion.
Thanks, Megan. I think that one of the things that has resonated so deeply with me in conversations with these wonderful women and others around belonging is being very real with ourselves about belonging as part of what, and knowing and understanding that we're talking about a very complex situation in which we're talking about belonging in a system that wasn't built for all of us. And that system of what some call dominant culture characteristics, some call white supremacy culture characteristics, is very prevalent in the work that we do on a daily basis in each of our organizations. And trying to cultivate a sense of belonging in that system is not what we're trying to do. What we're trying to do is really open the aperture and say, how do we not just rely on one dominant way to be successful or professional in our day-to-day lives, but how do we open ourselves up to more ways for us to be successful, more ways for us to think about problems, more ways to come about solutions. And so being very clear that that there is a current and active system that is not helpful to us in this belonging work has been a really good way for us to set up now what can we do about it conversations, and what could a better system look like that serves more people. And those are the types of, in my estimation, leadership conversations that we should be having across state government, in our organizations, on our teams, with our program staff, like at all levels. How do we do that? And how do we very clearly look at the fact that there is this system in place, and how can we make it better as our own leadership imperative? And that's regardless of if you supervise someone or not, because I do also very firmly believe in the fact that there's so much ingrained power in our state positions and influence in our state positions that regardless of supervisor hierarchy, we've got a lot of ability to make change as leaders in our roles. And that's the kind of belonging conversation that really excites me, and why it's so cool to be part of a team like this with Megan, Trey, and Michaela to talk about it more. And so I'm going to hand the mic over to Michaela to talk a little bit more about how that system shows up for her in her work, and what she tries to do about making it a better system for us.
Yeah, thanks, Marissa. And I think, I mean, this will probably be a theme if I get invited back to these conversations. Is like the theme that I share is I feel like I had a friend slash coach call me out one time where they're like, you're a person of contradictions. Like you're constantly sharing like the contradictory nature of life and your experiences. And, you know, as you were talking, Marissa, it like made me think about that idea of trying to create belonging in that system that isn't designed to support belonging, and how you do that, and how you navigate that. And one of the things that kind of stood out to me was the culture of perfectionism, like that white supremacy culture that you have to do things perfectly. And I realized, like, in a lot of ways, like I'm holding myself to that culture of perfectionism of how do we change systems, knowing that we're going to do it in a way to like changing systems towards belonging, and there's no way to not make mistakes along the way, because we're trying to do something that doesn't exist. Like there's no playbook for it. And so I think the epiphanies were to kind of acknowledge that one, what I think I heard you say is like, how do we imagine something that doesn't exist and work towards that and not pre-confine ourselves to how do we design belonging within this box that we're confined in, but break the box and build out. But then also getting there is not going to be linear. It's not going to be perfect. We're going to make mistakes along the way. And like, I'm realizing that I was share it for those of you who are listening. I was sharing that with these group of wonderful women before of like, can I even speak to this when I'm trying to lead some organizational changes within my team? And I feel like the systematic changes that we're working towards will create better belonging across state government, and it's having real impacts on the sense of belonging for team members. And I feel like a hypocrite. I feel like I can't speak to it if I'm making mistakes along the way. And through this like support of the group, it was that realization of like, you're going to make mistakes, you got to learn from them, but you got to keep doing. And we are here not to create belonging for us, but we create belonging so that we can better serve the public, so that our work can better serve the people of Washington. And so it's okay to not be perfect and do this along the way. And none of us are gonna be mistake free. So it was just helpful to really reflect on that. And Trey, I know you had some really great points that I'd love to have you extrapolate on as well.
Yeah, well, all of y'all have just laid such a solid foundation. I mean, there's a couple of things that really come to mind for me. Number one, we are the Washingtonians we're looking to serve. And y'all will probably hear me say that over and over here because there is some version of experience, I think, from a community perspective, where it's like it's the state versus the community, or like, and that to me is one of the biggest mistakes that we sometimes make. And I don't mean that in terms of community members, because they also have lived experience that makes them feel that, right? So that idea of belonging not being here is real. And sometimes the outcome is this very much distinction between, whoa, y'all are state government and I'm over here. But we're all Washingtonians, and state government's job is to serve Washingtonians. So even those of us who work in state government in Washington state who are here, some live elsewhere, but for the most part, majority of the employees live in the state. So we really are the ones we're looking to serve. So sometimes I want us to be able to understand and identify that, because when we're thinking about the things that actually make us feel as though we belong, right, then we can begin to implement it from a real personal perspective. And that's something that we all really can cherish and share in a way that is uniquely bound to us and our experience, but also benefits other Washingtonians, because now we have something that we're tethered to with regard to our own personal experience. And then when we're talking about, bringing about something that hasn't been done before, I mean, ultimately, the ideas of all of you out there who are listening and watching this, understanding that we are not going to get there without mistakes, right? And we also need to be vulnerable and transparent as state government representatives and employees to say to all of y'all, like, we know that up front, but we also want to utilize this space to be transparent about it, because oftentimes that's the part that's not spoken about, right? It's like, oh, we want to do this amazing thing for Washington state, we're going to wrap it up into this pretty package and serve it to all Washingtonians, when really we're still trying to figure out what the wrapping paper is. We're still trying to figure out what the box is inside. We're still trying to figure out our own personal connection to it. We're still trying to actually figure out how some of the folks who uphold the systems of harm, how we can even work to get them to begin to wrap their minds around this and to begin to embrace it in a way where they understand it's on them. So I think there's an element there for me where when we talk about systems of oppression and we talk about how systems are kind of there and we're working to change them, they're built of so many different things: policies, practices, approaches, ideologies, and people. right? And so a lot of this is bringing it down to a personal level, which is why I love being on this platform with y'all to really say, from my perspective, when I came into state government, I didn't know what belonging was, but I'll tell you this much. I definitely was like, oh, I know exactly what you're saying because I'm experiencing it in all of these areas of my life, right? I experience it in certain realms of my community, my family, the way that I'm raising my children to have a community mindset. There's so many different layers of belonging that I was able to then say, wait a minute, when I'm in this space and everyone is accepting what I'm sharing because they know I'm being genuine about it, whether they agree or not, I'm grateful for that because I know and feel that I belong. So, how can I replicate that in my job? How can I replicate that now in the Office of Equity and for state government? So I think that there's so many different things when we begin to peel back the layers of how we personally experience belonging, we're able to be reminded of some of the actual action items that we can bring in to start making it visible for others. Megan, let's keep this roundtable going. Where are you at with it?
No, I love that. And I love especially the point that you made, Trey, about that people are a part of the system. I think that we had to change the message about how oppression happens from people because people's feelings got hurt. So then we had to talk about it in a form of systems. The systems are, these systems. And I think somewhere along the line, we forgot that systems are designed, implemented, and maintained by people. So systems can be changed, redesigned, and that can be maintained by people. But every one of us has a role, and you have to do your own work to understand what your role can be, because this is really a team. Everyone in Washington, whatever your role is, whatever you do, everyone has a role to play in creating a space of and a new system that advances and perpetuates belonging. It's not going to be linear. It's not going to be easy. And also, I don't want us to confuse the sense and feeling of belonging with comfort. Why? Because change is uncomfortable, right? Trying something new is uncomfortable because what happens if you fail? Uh-oh, I made a mistake, right? So being comfortable is not making change happen because we should all feel uncomfortable through change. Personally, I experienced a tremendous growth when I became the acting director for the Office of Equity and the director. I was so uncomfortable. I was so scared. I was so nervous. It was my first time ever. This is my first time being a director. What does that mean? I always saw a director as somebody else, and now I'm having to step into this role. And for me now, I can just say I actually believe in myself, right? But that change was uncomfortable. And if we want to change and create a space in the future where we advance belonging for everybody, especially in state, if you're a state employee, our job is to serve, right? If you're not serving in a way that advances belonging, we have to hold ourselves accountable, right? Accountability is uncomfortable, but it's necessary. We have to understand, are we performing? And we have to look at ourselves and be real about that. Are we meeting our goals? Are we creating an impact? Are people better off because of what we're doing? If the answer is no, or if you don't know, then you could be part of a system that's perpetuating oppression, right? If you do know and you know that you're not making the impact, then you need to change course. So I want to be clear that comfort doesn't mean you don't belong, and being accountable doesn't mean you don't belong. But especially for those in state service, our job is here to serve, and we have to be accountable to that. I would say everyone in our community, we have to be accountable. Everyone in Washington State has to be accountable to advancing equity and change. It's easy to point the blame at one person, but it's never one person. It can't be one person, right? Because creating a system takes more than one person. Creating a community of belonging takes more than one person. So if you are pointing your finger at somebody else and not looking at the fingers pointing back at you, you need to do some self-reflection as well. And so I just want to add that part to the discussion, that people can change the system, or people can maintain and perpetuate oppression and racism. And we all have a role to play. I can't tell you what your role is, but I can tell you that the more you do your own work and understand the systems and the barriers that are in place, the easier it will be for you to identify where you can help make a difference and advance the belonging that we all deserve. And I just want to put this message out there. Your value isn't tied to what you do, who you are, how much you make, how much wealth you generate. Your value is tied to the fact that you're a human being and you exist. That's it. That's it. You have value because you exist. And if we treated everybody like that in Washington State, we could get there. I'll pass it to Marissa.
Oh, Megan, you make that hard to follow up on, my friend. I just want to sit in that message because I think it's a powerful one. And I know that many of the listeners that we've got today that are interested in and thinking about how do they do better in the belonging space. I hope that the message that they're receiving is there's no one thing to do in order to create that belonging space, because you've got to do some of that internal individual work so that you can show up authentically and make it comfortable for and brave and safe for all of the words for others to also show up authentically. And that takes a lot of work. That is underestimated work in trying to figure out how you yourself relate to the world around you. And then the work that we do as leaders and state employees in being able to amplify belonging in our systems where we have influence, and the reminder that we have a lot of influence to do that. And that while there are people that maintain systems of oppression, there are people that are able to also take action against those systems of oppression and are creative enough and are brave enough to say that we want a better system for ourselves and those of us around us. And so be in these conversation spaces with us, reach out to us, reach out to your colleagues who are also curious and thinking through, you know what? Yeah, there's a lot of power hoarding that happens here. There's a lot of fear of open conflict. There's a lot of one right way. There's a lot of perfectionism, like Michaela talked about, in the system. What can we do about those things? That's the belonging conversation to have with your colleagues, with yourself, with us. And I hope that you continue being in these conversation spaces with us and see that we're trying to figure it out too, and that we would love to have more people trying to figure it out with us. Trey, help me out here.
Yeah,
I was gonna just like, oh, sorry. As y'all were talking, like, it just reminded me of this Grace Lee Boggs quote, which says, like, you cannot change any society unless you take responsibility for it, unless you see yourself as belonging to it and responsible for changing it. And it's like, I think so often, Megan, when you're talking about the fingers, it's like, for so long, I wanted to point at everybody else. And I feel that pull, right? Like, to point at everybody else. And when I reflect and think about the times where I've had the most impact, where I've been able to bring people in to collaborate to make impactful change, it has been when I'm doing that self-work to say, like, I am a part of this system. I am benefiting from the system, and I'm not going to let that shame me into inaction or to like anger, but I'm going to take those benefits and I'm going to use the voice and the privilege of my position that I have to try to change the system now and to work with people to say, I am a part of this. We collectively need to change how we do our work together. And so it's just like, if there's anything that I see as like a takeaway from this, like it's amplifying what you shared to say like that. I think if we can all do that, how much of a collective change would that make in state government?
Yeah, this is powerful stuff, y'all. And I'm reminded of something here. And this is really a simple thing I think that anyone can do. And the one thing you can do is really reflect and write it down. When you write down the ways that maybe you have historically or are currently, upholding systems of oppression, white supremacy culture, dominant culture, all the things that we have been discussing here, which really are an antithesis to belonging, right? They're almost the direct opposite. You can begin to see, wait a minute, that's right. I've seen this as a step by step from my career, and I did what was always done. I've never tried to challenge these people that I know that are upholding these systems. I've never been the voice for change. The ways that you begin to examine yourself, and I just say it starts there, because we're all talking about what is it that I can do. It really brings it to a personal level, because it is something where it's like, wait, have I been having conversations about this, or have I been avoiding those kind of conversations because I just want to do my job, y'all. That's extra. I don't know that I can contribute. Everyone can. And that's what we're saying here. And that's another reason why we even have this platform at all, to share with you from a real personal perspective. But begin to write down those things. What is it that you're doing that is actually pushing forward change and doing something great? Not to give yourself a pat on the back, by the way, because I think we also love to celebrate the thought of doing something great. We love to celebrate that one time that we were very, hey, gung-ho about. No, that's not what we're saying here, right? We don't want you to be gung-ho about maybe the one time you did something 6 years ago. We want you to be thinking about what you're doing today and what you can do today. And I think sometimes that means you have to also really have to be serious and honest with yourself about the ways that you're upholding these cultures and these ideologies and these systems. How are you upholding them in your own right? And this is for everyone, because Michaela said it, sometimes you deal with the fact of like, well, what could I do? Like, how could I make change? Right. Maybe I just started in state government, or I'm at an entry level position in corporate space, or, hey, I'm just maybe, teaching this one class. Maybe I can do something. I promise you can do something that begins to plant the seed for others just by your action. So that's why we love to understand, as we shared earlier here in the intro, the objection and subjection of belonging means that it really can take on so many different forms. But examine yourself, because honestly, when you are doing that self-examination, it sometimes is exactly what Megan said. It's uncomfortable. It means you got to be real with yourself. This is just for you. Don't nobody got to see it. Okay. So it's between you, yourself, and you. And we want you to be able to really look at the ways that you're upholding certain things, because I promise you can start to cross those off your list by adding to say, wait a minute, instead of doing this, I could do this. You'll begin to see it more clearly. And sometimes lists just help us do that, right? I go to the grocery store without a list. I think I got everything. I come home. Oh, of course, forgot that thing because I didn't have it in front of me, right? So lists really help us identify some of these areas that may be uncomfortable for us. Some of you out there may be real champions for change and belonging, and you're excited because you want to do this self-examination so you can root yourself of these practices and ideologies and strategies and approaches that you've taken into your work or into your life, right? Because it's also outside of your job. But I think it's important that when we focus on the internal, we begin to bring out the external output that we really want to see. And I'm going to be honest here, for some of you who are like, I don't want to see that. I want to challenge you to ask yourself, why not? What is holding you back from being able to embrace new ideas, new thoughts, new ways of opening yourself up to help others? What are those things? Because I promise you this, you will probably feel a lot lighter to let that go once you begin to identify it. Any last words from my colleagues here?
I love that, Trey. Challenge yourself. If you aren't trying, if you're like, I can't do this, this ain't for me, this sounds like some fluff. What's the harm in trying? What do you have to lose? And if we can gain a society where everyone belongs, where our society is thriving, a Washington state that is thriving, when right now there are so many people who are struggling in our communities, and our destinies are linked. Our lives are connected. What happens in one community affects another community. So if you don't change, if you don't act, our whole society suffers. That's the reality of it. We think about income inequality, and poverty is high. You know what follows poverty? Crime, death, illness, right? Domestic violence, all these things follow poverty and inequality. Homelessness, right? These things are continuing to grow and people are scared. So that's what we have to lose, is a society that is suffering. But we have to gain a thriving society. I think that that's beautiful. And that's the call to action. I love what you said, Trey, about the list, because people are like, this is so big. It's so big. Our problems are so huge. I don't know what to do, right? Just jot down one thing, right? Sometimes what does he call it? A quick win? Do one thing, write down one thing that you commit to doing tomorrow. One thing, maybe you can start with, I'm going to say hi to every person that I'll come across. I'm going to smile and nod. Okay. It's awkward, but I'm going to do it and check it off. You're like, oh, I did it, right? Write down another thing and another thing. And as you start to cross things off, not only do you gain confidence, but I bet you the tasks start getting a little more complicated, a little more robust, and pretty soon you'll be tackling larger items that you never thought you could do. So I love that as a call to action. I love that as like something small that we can do, because what we can't do is say, I'm just going to continue to learn. I want to learn more. We don't have time for that. Our society has such big need, especially if you're a state employee. We have some complex problems we're dealing with in the 21st century, and we need you to act. We need you to do something. Do something that's more than learning. Continue to learn. I don't have the answer. No, I don't think you've heard us say we don't have the answer. None of us have the answer. I'm not even going to pretend like I know what to do. But you know what? I feel very confident that together we can figure it out. And we'll probably still get it wrong sometimes. And then we'll adapt and figure it out, right? Because ultimately, this is about progress. Now, when we first, had society, we didn't have much. We weren't connected. We had no phones. We had no running water. Our houses were collapsing all over the place if we had houses. But progress seems we have advancements, and human beings can have progress. We have to, if we're going to continue to survive. Progress is a good thing. Progress means we're getting and making things better for future generations, and we're advancing as intelligent human species. And so we need to have progress, but we need your help to do it. So I love the call to action, and that's just what I wanted to add. And we'll see. I look forward to seeing y'all next time.
Yeah, absolutely. Huge shout out to my amazing colleagues, Megan, Marissa, and Michaela. I was with the 3Ms, y'all, and I'm so grateful because their collective brilliance is another reminder of the fact that we also have some amazing employees in state government who are yearning for this change, y'all. So for those of you who are maybe on the fringes, or you now know you at least got us, because we right here, we got your back. We understand we're on this journey together. And for those of you outside of state government, we welcome you on this journey with us as we learn, as we grow, as we continue to share in our authentic way here on the Where We Belong podcast. Thank y'all so much for listening and watching today.